Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hi, my name's Jonathan Holmes. I am a video game person for a long time now. 2007 I think was my first jobs, maybe 2006, so heading towards my 20-year anniversary. I'm known for some stuff. I was the editor-in-chief of Destructoid for a little while. I still write for them on the side about once a month because I love it. I write for Nintendo Force magazine. I've been doing that for, over 10 years? Did we just hit 10 years? I think we did. So that's fun. Every other month, a magazine in the style of Nintendo Power comes out. And I write about games on Nintendo consoles. Every once in a while, I get to take a break. I think I reviewed the TurboGrafx 16 Mini in there, which is not exactly a Nintendo console, but it's Nintendo adjacent. For those who know their video game history, the TurboGrafx 16 was a big competitor to the Nintendo and Super Nintendo for a little while, so it is for old people at the very least. And I think a magazine like Nintendo Force, which is trying to be like a magazine, so number one, that's not hip with the kids, and number two, it's about Nintendo. A lot of it is very much hearkening back to the 80s and 90s, so that's a lot of fun. More current, I write for Lost in Cult, which is a publishing house out of the UK doing a book series. They call it a zine, but I think the last zine was 400 pages long, so not really a zine. It's a hardcover book with art by Yoshitaka Amano, who is the primary artist on the original Final Fantasy games, 1 through 6, and is still kicking around, is still part of the series now. One of my favorite artists of all time. He's doing the cover of a book called Lock On, number 6, what did I do in there? I interviewed Jasper Byrne, creator of Lone Survivor, about his experiences re-releasing the game recently, and a unreleased game in the Lone Survivor series that nobody's seen but me and like one other person. Whoa, it's amazing. And I also interviewed the creators of Trombone Champ, Dan and Jackie, who I've known off and on from interviewing them for various games they've worked on for a long time. Lock On issue 6. So, what am I telling you about me? What do you even know now? Oh, and I was on Road Rules, an MTV show in the late 90s, early 2000s. So, what am I saying? I'm saying I'm old. I'm saying I do this still, even though you do something for, this long. It's not, either you got rich or you're doing it for some other reason. And I must be the other one, because I'm not PewDiePie or Ninja or Sniper Wolf with like 3 S's. Is that a person? I can't keep up. I love video games. I am nostalgic for the old ones. I'm interested in the new ones that are weird and hearkening back to olden days, or just getting to the heart of who someone really is. That was the difference, I think, largely between the games I grew up on and the games that are most popular these days. Sure, you've got your Kojimas, you've got your Neil Druckmanns, you've got your Cory Balrogs, who are the auteurs directing big old games like the modern God of Wars and the Last of Us's, but it's still made by like 100 people, these games, and they're made by committee, they're made with big-time publisher oversight. The opportunity for an artist to get in there and be like, I'm just going to follow my instincts, and I don't even know why I'm making this. I just feel weird today, so suddenly I'm making El Paso Elsewhere, or Airport for Aliens Currently Run by Dogs. These are some great games by Strange Scaffold, who's one of my favorite modern developers, who's finally making a lot of money, which is exciting for me. At least I hope it's a lot. Anyway, I like it when I get to find out what the people who made the game are like through just playing their game. And as such, when I was volunteered myself to be a part of this podcast, I looked through a massive list of games that have already been picked by other people. So I couldn't pick Guitaru Man, which is a game where I feel like you really got a sense of the unique sensibilities, priorities, goals, and values of the developers of it, because you don't make Guitaru Man because you're trying to get rich. I don't know if you played it, PS2, seminal classic, in my opinion. Tough sell for $60. I think it's like 6 or 7 songs, and sweet and quirky, non-realistic, very much true to the character designer. Anyway, I'm stealing the Guitar Man episode. I wanted to do Guitar Man. I would have done Earthbound. I would have done Mega Man X, which, though very mainstream friendly, still speaking to some very unique sensibilities and influences, the whole Mega Man series. I like those old games. I like those indie games. And maybe a mix of the two, in a sense, is the game I'm going to pick today, which is Zak McKracken and the Alien Mindbenders, a Lucasfilm Games, which doesn't exist anymore, game that I bought with my own money as a young child for the Commodore 64 home computing system. Now, for folks who don't know, the Commodore 64 was a computer that was just a big, chunky keyboard. Brown. Big brown keys, light brown body. And you could buy a computer monitor for it, sure, but it was designed to hook up to your television. And these were big boxes, these TVs, antennas. And in order to get it to hook up to the back of the television, you had to stick some metal next to some screws and tighten the screws tight on the metal so it connected to the TV. Weirdest thing for me about the Commodore 64, it also could like broadcast somehow to TVs nearby. So I had a way of playing my Commodore 64 on my TV in my bedroom, even though it was hooked up to the living room TV. I still don't know exactly how it works. Radio waves? Unsure. So that was $200 in the late 80s. Then the disk drive to actually play games for it was another $200. A big brown disk drive. Oh, there's a cat playing with a toy in the background. Hello. So very much buying the system in itself made me feel very grown up as a kid. I saved up $400 from babysitting and was using my money to make my own choices, taking risks with my money, and really entering the world of adulthood, at least the adult world of capitalism, in a safe way. And one of the first games I bought for it was Zak McKracken and the Alien Mindbenders. No idea what the game is. Never read about it. There was no internet. There was no G4 TV to talk about games. You just went to the computer store, looked at a box, said, that looks cool, hoped for the best, read the back of the box, and then bought it. And the games were a little cheaper. I think it was maybe $25, $30. Came on a couple of floppy disks. And I knew that it was related to Maniac Mansion, or at least it was from the same publisher as Maniac Mansion, which I had played and adored. Somebody copied it for me, and I played a copy. Back then, games came with copy protection. You had to, like, look at a dial. It's very hard to explain. I'm already getting tired. I was all filled with vim and vigor. Some would say piss and vinegar at the start of this. Now I'm already tiring myself out talking about this stuff too long. So look into the copy protection days of LucasArts games if you're curious. The game also came with a fake newspaper, which I read before I actually played the game. So I couldn't drive. My mom drives me to the mall. Buy this game, Zak McKracken and the Alien Mindbenders. It's got a guy with a tie on holding a goldfish in a little goldfish bowl, and I think he's carrying a broom. There's an alien near him. There's a woman looking very smart and coy in like a cozy sweater. I think they're in some ruins. Could be Aztec, could be Egyptian pyramid. Fascinated by the box art. Open it up as we're driving home. Giant fake newspaper called the National Inquisitor, talking about a two-headed squirrel and how the phone company might be evil. And it took place in the future. I'm guessing it was the early 2000s. I'm a little fuzzy on this. I haven't played the game that recently, but I still think about it regularly and tell people, go play it. Try it out. If you like Earthbound in particular and how it uses magical realism to make fun of modern culture, but also pay tribute to it. The sweet innocence of the children entering into a world where people they thought were their best friends end up being awful corporate capitalist monsters Zak McKracken did a lot of the same stuff, but in a very different way, in a very Western sensibility way. So I get home, boot up the game, am amazed. It starts with a cutscene, which were very new at the time. And the thing about video games and LucasArts in particular of the time is you have to remember we had Pac-Man up until now. We had Super Mario Brothers, which was amazing because the screen scrolled. That was new. Before that, we had just had Pitfall, where the screen didn't even scroll for a 2D platformer. We had Donkey Kong, where the screen didn't scroll. It was screen-by-screen levels. And we had, like, Zelda had just come out, which, again, no scrolling screen, but big world to explore. But a cutscene was very, very new. I believe the SCUM system of LucasArts games actually created the concept of the cutscene. Ron Gilbert, who had worked on, if I remember correctly, definitely Maniac Mansion. Before that, it was a Labyrinth game from LucasArts. I can't remember if it even came out. Somebody really famous worked on it too. It might have been the guy who made Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Someone big in the literary world who did comedy fantasy worked on this Labyrinth game. And it was like the first game to have a system called the SCUM system where you collect items in your inventory and then create sentences using them, using stuff you click on at the bottom. Like clicking on things was new. You got to remember that. There was no windows, at least that I was aware of. The whole concept of using a mouse or using a joystick. I used an old Atari 2600 joystick that was compatible with the Commodore 64 to click on words and then click on items in my inventory to build sentences like use remote control. And then you press the button after you click on use and then pick the remote control. And then the TV turns on. And you're a grown-up watching TV in your own apartment. Which brings me to the actual content of Zak McKracken and the Alien Mindbenders. It's about a journalist who works for the newspaper that you just read in the car on the way home from the video game store as your mom drives you home. He works for the National Inquisitor. His boss is a jerk who doesn't care about Zak, who doesn't care about truth. He just wants people to buy his newspaper. So he says, Zak, we're sending you out to Mount Rainier, where something really interesting happened years ago, the first UFO sighting. But we're not going to talk about that. Where there was a two-headed squirrel sighting in the side of a mountain. So go find that squirrel, Zak, and do a story about it. National Inquisitor, of course, a parody of the National Enquirer, which does stories about Bat Boy and, talking slug makes love with a woman and ends up having slug human hybrid babies. I don't know if that story actually happened, but gosh darn it, it should have. Maybe I should write that story. Anyway, Zak McKracken seems like a guy caught in the system. And he is able, as you see in his dreams that happen shortly thereafter, he has dreams that are premonitions of a visit to Mars, of engaging with threatening aliens, of getting to the bottom of the truth that has been hidden from him. Because the true villains of the world are disguising themselves in plain sight, right in front of him, using Groucho Marx glasses, which is ridiculous, but also seems like something that would happen. This cat is now meowing at me. What's wrong? What's wrong, Biggie? His name's Biggie. Bigsby, actually, named after the guitar part. All right, I've soothed him for now, maybe. Back to Zak McKracken. So, Zak is someone with potential, but it has not yet been met, which is something you relate with. And he's stuck doing stuff he doesn't want to do. Very relatable to any kid that's been in school, any kid that's imagining what it's going to be like to get a job someday. So you get to mess with your fears about what adulthood is and also get to play with the powers that come from being an adult. These days, people get that from games like Grand Theft Auto and whatnot. This was all very new at the time, that I could explore a world in 3D. So this was a game where you start off at your boss's office watching a cutscene. Again, totally new to me. There was short cutscenes in Maniac Mansion, but seeing a cutscene boot the game right up and throw me right into the story felt very new. And then into a dream sequence that was surreal with fantastic music. And then you just wake up in your apartment and it's time to figure out how you're going to get this job done of finding this two-headed squirrel. You've got a debit card, which was also totally new. Debit cards weren't mainstream in the 80s. So this game predicted some of these things. It actually did end up happening later in the future, like debit cards. And you have to make your way into the world. And unlike Maniac Mansion, where some folks who start off outside and go into a mansion to try to save Dave's girlfriend from Dr. Edison? Is that his name? Oh, it's been a little while. This game, Zak McKracken, is about leaving an enclosed space like your apartment and traveling first to Mount Rainier, then you go to Kathmandu, you go to the Bermuda Triangle, later on you go to Mars, you meet women, and the women are cooler than you, and you get to play as them. Zach is someone who's got area to grow, and that's one of the other things I loved about the game. He doesn't start off as a hero. He doesn't start off as someone who even cares about the world, but through all the experiences he has, he learns to connect with other people. He learns to appreciate actual truth instead of seeking the fake truths that his boss at the tabloid is telling him to go find. And he empathizes with the whole world. He travels the world and uses magic crystals to change bodies with a dolphin, change bodies with a yak. It seems silly, I guess, but at the time, again, the scope of the game, the fact that you could walk, it's largely 2D-esque, but you can walk in and out of the background. You have to remember, there was no Wolfenstein 3D. There was no polygons then. Things were flat. Things were Zelda. Things were Pac-Man. Things were Super Mario. The fact that they really wanted to give me a world to explore, even though the technical limitations didn't make it look real. The graphics are far from realistic, but they really wanted to express their true feelings about the world. And then come to find out, the creator of Zak McKracken, David Fox, does travel the world. And if I remember correctly, he married a woman named Annie, the main character who's much smarter and better than Zach, who helps him into this world of magic, mystery, and discovering the truth about aliens and religion and science and all these things, is named Annie. So it very much came from David Fox's heart, as far as I can tell. The whole game and the whole spirit of LucasArts at the time had a certain playful innocence, a self-mockery at times, but also a delight with the fact that they were even getting to make games at all. There's a fresh-faced joy to exploring what games are even possible that all of these games have, that you don't see as much today in AAA. You know, you got to remember, this is George friggin' Lucas making these games. He's one of the biggest names in entertainment. And he was like, David Fox, we're going to give you a bunch of money to make a game called Zak McKracken and the Alien Mindbenders. And it's okay if it doesn't sell super well, because I'm George Lucas. I'll be fine. So let's just experiment and see what works. And it's very much in the spirit of the movies of the time, too. I don't know, I'm not as well versed in what's popular with movies outside of Marvel and Fast and Furious and all that, but this was a time when movies were trying to expand in a whole new way as well, with stuff like Back to the Future and Buckaroo Banzai. There were all these games with characters with alliterative names, Marty McFly, I just mentioned Buckaroo Banzai, and then Zak McKracken comes in and sort of latches on to these movies that set you in the real world, but then tell you, what if there was something magical just around the corner that you didn't know, like time travel, like in Back to the Future, or Buckaroo Banzai, which I just realized most people haven't seen. Peter Weller, classic Peter Weller, Jeff Goldblum, John Lithgow. Oh, I just realized Christopher Lloyd is in both Back to the Future and Buckaroo Banzai. Watch them both. Double feature these movies and play Zak McKracken right after. They're all sharing some weird DNA underneath the surface. I don't know if it was intentional. But then Zak McKracken with another alliterative name. Playful, silly is what it communicates right away. But then when you get into the game, you see it's actually about real stuff. I forgot to even mention, Zak McKracken is fighting against the aliens who own the phone company that are making the world stupider by dial tones. You ever wonder, why does a dial tone sound like that? It turns out it's because it sends waves to your brain to dampen your brain activity, to make you dumb. And as a kid, this was fascinating and believable. That's the thing about magical realism. It has to feel like maybe this actually could be true. And nobody tells you that's why the dial tone. Wait a minute. Do people even know what a dial tone is anymore? Pre-cell phones, when you picked up a phone off the cradle, it went even when you hung up. And before you started a call, it went watch a movie called Adaptation with Meryl Streep and Nicolas Cage if you want to see the two human beings try to recreate the dial tone sound. It's a fun movie. Also, magical realism going on there too. So, yeah, the phone company, as it turns out, was evil. But the aliens are also not smart. And they disguise themselves. They've got long heads with eyeballs at the top, sort of like snails, and then mouths that are human enough looking. If they throw Groucho Marx glasses over the bottoms of their heads, and then a long 10-gallon cowboy hat with holes cut in the top to see through, they certainly don't look like people, but you can't tell immediately that they're aliens. And that's how they trick the world, because the world is too dumb to notice that an alien force is controlling them using the telephone company right underneath their noses, right underneath those Groucho Marx noses. It speaks so much to the things we see today, where people get tricked by political parties, corporate brands. I hate to say it, but some Twitch and YouTubers, some AAA game developers, into thinking this is what you should do with your life. Follow us. Do what we say. And it's like a cute version of They Live, I guess you could say. Oh, there's a baby crying nearby. I should probably stop this long rant about Zak McKracken. So, Zak McKracken, to sum up, is a game that, with its humor, with its charm, with its ingenuity, with its spirit of adventure, its spirit of playfulness, and also its subversiveness and its willingness to call out the powers that be and get people to think a little bit about how, hey, if in this game the phone company could trick everyone into getting stupider by using the phone, what are people maybe tricking me into in real life? Gets you thinking about your real life in ways that I've never forgotten about. I'm totally puzzled that this game did not go on to become a huge series like how Maniac Mansion and Monkey Island, which came afterwards, did from LucasArts Games. Monkey Island is sort of like the Back to the Future. Everyone knows it. Everyone loves it. Zak McKracken, I'm realizing as I talk about it, is sort of the Buckaroo Banzai. Nobody remembers that one or knows about it, but the people who like it love it. My understanding is it's hugely popular in Germany, where people make fan films of it, and there's like 20 fan games of it. All the same, I really hope that Terrible Toy Box, who made the recent Return to Monkey Island game, which David Fox worked on, is my understanding, along with Grumpy Gamer, Ron Gilbert. I really hope they get the rights back to Zak McKracken. I will fund this myself as long as it's cheap. I could probably drum together $100,000. I said earlier in the show, I'm not rich from video game journalism, but I work several other jobs outside of video games where I actually make a decent amount of money. We got to make a new Zak McKracken. We got to make a game that brings people back to that innocence and that excitement, but also that subversiveness. I'm trying to think. Some Suda51 games are similarly sort of subversive, but they're so surreal and somewhat janky. Travis Touchdown, I just realized. Zak McKracken, Marty McFly, Travis Touchdown. They're all in the same alliterative name club. Something about names like that communicates you're going to get something silly, but also something somewhat subversive. Anyway, they don't make games like Zak McKracken anymore, and that's a gosh darn shame. You can permadeath in this game. It's frustrating as heck by people who are used to the conveniences of modern games that are really designed to be smooth, frictionless experiences. You got to use a guidebook, and it came with you could buy a guidebook. I forgot about this. You could call a hotline to get clues, and it came with a guidebook that they didn't want to spoil the game. So in order to read the guidebook, you had to put a red gel over the text So you only read the text that you wanted to. You wouldn't accidentally glance at something that was beyond what you wanted to read. All of this was so friggin' magical as a kid. I can't even tell you. I'm sitting there with a computer I bought myself and sticking the floppy disk in and hearing it. That's the way disk drives used to sound then. Whipping out my guidebook, putting the red gel over the text, being like, how much do I want to know about exploring the Aztec pyramids or Kathmandu? And getting into this world that adults who thought like kids, playful, experimental kids, but they're grown up enough to be able to work for George friggin' Lucas and make this game, communicating with the developers through what they created, joining with them, feeling like I was a part of their inside jokes, a part of their experimentation with creativity in this whole new medium, video games. Just an incredible feeling to play this game. And I feel I want to talk about it more, but I've run out of cogent thoughts that I definitely am going to deliver. So I'll just thank everyone for listening to this show. And hit me up on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. Oh, a Zak McKracken game that's goofs on Elon Musk and Twitter and social media would be so good. Oh, there's so much that could still be done with the series. Anyway, I'm on there at Non-Trotsky. I used to be Tron Knots on there, but then Gamergate happened, and it was not worth that, so I changed my handle to Non-Trotsky, which is actually the name of the boss of Bit Trip Runner, second level. That was originally a goof on my name, Tron Knots, and now I'm goofing back, calling myself Non-Trotsky. Yeah, I'm in a bunch of video games. I just remembered. Jeez. I'm in Streets of Red. I'm in Retro City Rampage. There's a house named after me in Wander Song, a candy shop called Holmes Sweets. Oh, man, I've been so lucky to be a part of all this stuff. I just realized I got to do all the stuff in my own way that the people who made Zak McKracken did. I got to make a bunch of things and talk about video games and make podcasts like this and communicate with people at home and say, like, you can have fun. You can explore what's possible and be creative and use video games for more than just trying to make a bunch of AAA money. I'm so friggin' lucky. Thanks for having me on the show. My name again is Jonathan Holmes. Thanks so much for having me on Side Quests, and happy gaming, everybody.
Do you find yourself playing older games and wishing that there were new discussions about those games? Enter Tales from the Backlog. Hi, I'm Dave Jackson, and on each episode, I'm joined by a guest to break down those games that may be stuck in your ever-expanding backlog. Each episode looks at one game in depth, focusing on mechanics, story, music, and other aspects with no spoilers until a clearly marked spoiler wall in the middle. If you've played the game, go ahead and climb that spoiler wall and enjoy in-depth story discussions, and if not, jump out when we warn you and maybe go play that game for yourself. We have over 100 episodes in the feed, everything from Disco Elysium to Tunic to discussion episodes about how to get into horror games, and if games actually need to be fun, or if they have more to offer. I guarantee that there's something in there for everybody. Once again, that's Tales from the Backlog, available wherever your podcasts are found.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.